Hello everyone and welcome to another Feed Army video. My name is Emmanuel and today we will talk about how to add your shipping rates in Google Merchant Center and what to look out for. So the normal method is through your UI in Google Merchant Center. This is the new version where the settings are now here instead of here in the top right corner. So what we want to do is go to Products and Store, Shipping and Returns, and here you can add your shipping policy. The second method is through your feed. So you can have a spreadsheet, you can have a TSV feed, a Google Sheet, XML files, and that is done like this. You have an attribute and then you have your values. Or if you want to see how a XML file looks like, then it will look like this. What is important with the feed level edits is that this will override your settings in Google Merchant Center. So let's assume we've got here the UPS ground, and let's say this is then a $10 for New York. Let's assume that is the case. Then here you can override your pricing if you want to specifically for this specific product have a $5. You can also specify that with regions. So you can do whatever you want. You can add the postcode here to specify where you want this charge to be applicable. And let's say that we want to add more shipping options for that specific product, let's say with the different postcodes, then we can add another column and then repeat the values and specifying the postcode. And to specify it more in detail, what you can do is when you have the shipping here, you can actually change the value like this. So let's expand that so we can read it easily. So we can see the first part is the country, then the postcode. Let's say 1013, that's for New York. And then the price. So we remove this column. Then we want to add the minimum handling time. Let's say that's 0. The maximum handling time, 2 days. The minimum transit time, 3 days, and then the max transit times, 5 days. So then it will look like this. Make sure when you add a price that you always add the currency as well. So 5 USD and not just 5, because otherwise that will cause issues. Now, if you want more details, here's a shipping details that you can view because you can add a lot more info. So read everything because you don't have to add the minimum handling time or the transit time. You can just, as I shown here, just use US and then $5 with 3 colons in between. You can also add the service name so that it allows you to easily identify what the service you are offering. And then of course with the XML file you have something similar, but then it's configured differently. So as you can see, that is added, and then the second option here, so a ground and express. So that is how you add the shipping rates in the feed itself. And then in the Google Merchant Center UI you do the same. So you just click on add shipping policy. Let's say we will call this test for now. We choose our country. Now, whenever you choose a country, make sure that the currency that you choose at the final step, the shipping cost, matches your target country. So if you don't know, first check what the currency is that you're using and don't use something else. For example, if I'm located in the US and I'm targeting the US, but I'm also targeting France, let's say we want to add that as the second country. So let's say we're targeting France, then it is best to check what the feed is. So if in the feed it says euro as your pricing, then make sure that in the last step you choose euro as well. But let's just choose US just for the simplicity purposes. Let's continue. You can specify your products or all products. When you specify products, you need to use a shipping label. So in your feed, what you can do is then add a column with the shipping label. Now, one thing I want to note is that if you're using the underscore as a spacer for the words, then make sure that you do that everywhere. So for example, we have image link that is with a space, so make sure then that you do the same here. Now it will not cause any issues, but from the policy perspective, Google recommends to use always the same naming convention, and with an underscore or without an underscore, it doesn't really matter. But let's say we have a shipping label, and then we want to label this product. For example, it's a promo, promo shipping. Once this is processed in Google Merchant Center, which will take half an hour, then this will show the label here. Of course, it will not show now because it is not processed, and this is just a test file. Now let's click on all products for now and click on continue. We can specify by carrier, or we can specify specific delivery details. So let's just specify. The cutoff time is really important. Now everything that you add here must be on your website's shipping policy as well. So if it's asking for the cutoff time, make sure you add that on your policy. Same for the handling time and the transit time. Now what you will notice is sometimes you get an error. So let's say just 0 to 0. Sometimes you get an error here, let's say 1. It's not showing the error, for example 1. Now, sometimes it shows an error where it asks for you must add a minimum handling or transit time. What you need to do is just make one little change. For example, just change from Monday to Friday and then back again, and then it resets this, and then it works correctly, and then there's no error. I can't replicate it now, but there used to be a month ago, and for many years before that, you could not continue because of this little error. So make sure that you choose the correct handling times, the days itself, so Monday to Friday. Let's say this is 3 to 5 days. Here we go. So the enter a small number, 1 or smaller. As you can see, makes no sense. And whatever you do, it doesn't change. But if you do this, and back to Friday, there you go. It is gone. Let's change that to 1. And then continue. Now this is where I mentioned that you must change the currency to match that of your data feed. This to avoid that the currency doesn't have a mismatch. So to add free shipping, you used to be able to just add a flat rate of 0. However, that no longer is possible. You have to change it to free shipping just like that. So you cannot specify a specific flat rate. That is a little bit annoying, but that used to be able to be an option. You can, of course, do that in your shipping feed. So let's say here, you can do that, and that is not a problem. And same in your XML file. So you can also specify free over a specific order value. So let's say over $50, it is free shipping. Or you could also specify a flat rate. You can also specify no shipping below a specific order value. What that means that if this specific product, let's say, is $40, then this will no longer be optional. So you cannot order it. Now, some people might get confused, like, okay, I own like bulk buying products or marketplaces where they have bulk buying. So that happens, for example, with a tile. You don't sell one tile, you sell a pack of 5 or 10 or even more. So let's assume you sell the pack that is applicable is, let's say, $50 or more. Then if a merchant chooses one that is, because you list the prices as a singular, let's say it's just $1.50, then you cannot purchase it, or this shipping rate is not applicable to that. But don't get confused that Google Shopping requires you to sell that as the single item product. You cannot force the customer to buy it at $50 for the whole pack, because you need to allow the customer to purchase it at the value that you show. You can then instead show the $50 pack in Google Shopping. That is not a problem. And then you can, this shipping rate is applicable and you will not have any issues. So that is something that I've noticed that lots of merchants get confused with, that this means that you can avoid having customers buy an item that is less than 50, while technically it is per the shipping rate, but it is not for the policy. You need to allow the customer to purchase the item at the value that you set in your feed. So if it's $1.50, you need to allow them to buy one item. And then you of course have other options such as the price. So if then let's say it's over 25, then the shipping rate is, let's say, $5, and then above, and then it's free, for example. You can also specify by carrier in here as well. I know that you could do that in the delivery times. You could specify that. You can also base it off weight values, even destinations, and you can create a whole region as well. So you can add postal codes or the states, and you can even create zones. You can also specify by order of item, and even more advanced where you have multiple columns. So for example, based on weight and destination. But this advanced cost table is quite complicated to set up. So leave that as a last resort if you have the shipping rates like that. So one thing I want to also note is that with using Shopify, the shipping rates might be overwritten if you've added it manually. So if you're using an application such as the Google and YouTube app in Shopify, and you have set that up as automatic to submit the shipping rates, then anything you add here will be overwritten. To avoid that, you can set the shipping rate submission in the Shopify app to manual. Then anything you add here after you've made the change will be able to stay, so it doesn't get removed or overwritten. So now you need to make sure that the shipping rates are accurate. You can test this by going to products, select a product, and then in the tab you go to shipping and tax calculator, and then here you can see your shipping rates. So you can see here, and you can change the destination to find something else. For example, Texas. And then it resets and checks the price. Make sure that this price matches your checkout, because Google checks between your feed and what is shown on your website. So both the policy needs to be correct and in the checkout. My recommendation, if you offer multiple shipping rates, for example, standard delivery, express delivery, or fast delivery, make sure that you add them all here, because that can be beneficial to the customers who want to see that you offer multiple options. If you're having issues in your needs attention tab, so you go to products, needs attention, like you can see here, make sure that you check your shipping policies. Make sure that it is correct. For example, certain cases you might have it wrong, or your feed is not processed yet. So what you do is go to settings, data sources, go to your feed, and make sure you click on update to reprocess the data. Once that is done, then your shipping rates will reapply, and that takes around half an hour. So make sure that it is done. So you can see it was France, and we have removed that. And now if we go back to the products, within half an hour, this will be removed. Now in certain situations, for example, if you're using the Google and YouTube app and you've accidentally added shipping rates within the feed and you can't remove it, or you're using another data feed app and you can't remove the shipping rates because it's added in the feed, and you want your shipping rates here to apply, what you need to do is go to data sources. So go to settings, data sources. If you're using the old UI, the settings will be up here in the top right corner. You go to data sources, and then you select your feed, and then attribute rules. Now if you don't see this tab, don't worry, go to add-ons, so settings, add-ons, and then add advanced data feed management, and then once that is enabled, you can come back here and then you will see the attribute rules. So now what we want to do is go and click on add attribute rule, and we choose shipping. So if you want to, then cancel this. This is for this adding a source. Then what we want to do is click on add modification and then clear. Once you've done that, then all shipping rates within the feed will be removed. That means that in the settings and within your Google Merchant Center UI, all the shipping rates will be applicable. So that's a good little tip for when you want to make these modifications. Of course, I always recommend fixing the issue at the feed source, so in your app, but if everything fails, you can always use the feed rules. So that's it actually about how to apply shipping rates, different methods, all the tips and tricks. Of course, in the future there will be more different things because Google introduces new mechanics all the time. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment downstairs, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.